Hello and welcome to Lunch for the Soul. I have such a special guest to welcome you to today. Be ready to be wowed. I hope it touches your heart and your soul, since that's what Lunch for the Soul is all about. So let's get right to it. I'm going to bring in Benjamin, aka Ben Hilden. Welcome to Lunch for the Soul.
Thanks for having me, Melissa.
Oh, I'm so happy you're here and you have been through so much. And I want to go back quite a few years ago when you were only 16 years old. So this was 2007 we're talking about.
Yep, yep.
What happened?
So it was actually Good Friday that day, and I was going into back therapy. And I'd always take this back road that it's not taken very often because it's a back road. No one takes that out. Everyone takes the highway in, and I've been down that road many times because I'm late for school a lot of the time, and I'd never been in an accident. I'd never lost control of my car, and on that day it was different. I lost control on ice, and I couldn't get it back. I went down the ditch, hit an approach, and then I started flipping my car into a field. And I remember when I was in the car, I was being thrown around in the car like a rag doll, pretty much. And finally, I was ejected out the passenger door because I wasn't wearing my seatbelt, and I went face first in the field. And that was kind of when, at that moment, everything changed. Like, I knew that at that moment when my face made impact, like my face shattered on just immediately. And so I knew everything in my life was then different. Like, everything going forward was gonna be different as far as just life in general. And
Mhm.
um, after I laid there for a little bit, I started to realize my actual situation. And the situation was that no one's going to find me. I mean, I'm on a back road. It's Good Friday. There's nothing going on. There's no school. And I knew where I was. I knew what was going on. I knew I was in a bad car accident, and the pain within my body and my face was pretty much beyond comprehension. And so, it's kind of like in the movies, I guess. You always see like how before someone dies, their whole life kind of flashes before their eyes, and they just kind of remember everything that they've been through. And honestly, that was what actually happened, where I remembered my whole childhood and everything up to that point. And the one thing that was really, really on my heart was how I treated my parents at that time in my life, because I love basketball. I mean, sports was my entire life. And I treated my parents horribly because I grew up on a dairy farm where it was a family farm. Like, I had to work. Like, that was something that was just normal. And that was what I was born into. And I didn't want to work. I wanted to be playing sports with my friends. And so I was always at odds with them. It would always end up with me yelling at them, and it was bad. And so the one thing that I wanted before I died, because I knew that I was suffocating, I didn't know why. Later, I found out that after it was all said and done, I had bit through my tongue, and all that blood was going into my lungs instead of my stomach. But while I was suffocating, the realization that I'm close to death was there. So I began crawling on my back, hoping that I could somehow reach home. I'm a mile from home. It's not going to happen. But I was still trying for the sole purpose to say goodbye to my parents because of how I treated them. And the guilt on my heart was immense. And so as I was crawling on my back, I first heard a woman's voice and then a man's voice. And it turned out to be the two people that I was crawling to. My parents actually ended up finding me in the field that day. And to me and my story, there's been a lot of miracles, a lot of crazy things, but I would say the most heartfelt, the greatest thing, the greatest miracle to me was that the two people that I was crawling to were the two people that actually came to find me. And my parents that day, they had a meeting rescheduled 3 times to that day at that very time. But the craziest part was that my parents never, ever, ever take that road. it's a back road. Like they take the highway in every single time. And on that day, at that time, 5 minutes after me, they decided to take that road. And the only time that's taken is when they're doing cattle or planting or harvest, and none of that was going on. It was in April. There's nothing going on.
I just have the chills when I think about God's timing, because why? Why would they do that if it wasn't a higher being that led them to do that, which ended up saving your life? I understand that your mom was holding you in her arms and you stopped breathing.
Yeah, yeah. For about 4 minutes, it was she said that my body went limp. They were holding me, they were praying because at first they didn't know it was me. When they came out there, the car was so totaled that they didn't know it was their car. And then they went and looked at me, and because my face was so distorted from the impact, and my face just ballooned up with swelling, and my mom couldn't recognize me. She had no clue it was me until she looked down and saw my feet, because my shoes are ripped off my accident, and then she recognized my feet, and that was it, because I was so full of blood and mud that she had no clue. And so that was when they obviously at that moment she told my dad, and they came over, and like any parent, started bawling and praying to God that they had saved me. And a few minutes later, she said I actually stopped breathing. My body went limp, and for about 4 minutes, and then she said I just came back and started breathing again. I mean, to them, it was an answer to prayer, because there was no understanding as to how. I came back to life. And later on in life, I found out what had happened during those few minutes. So, but yeah, that was later on in college that I had that actual flashback of that. So
It's just unbelievable. And then what happened once you got into the operating room? Because I understand then something else awful happened.
yeah, so going into the hospital, I had, just right off the bat, a really small chance to live. My injuries were very severe, where I had a traumatic brain injury. I had a shattered face. My entire face was completely shattered. My nose broken in 9 pieces. My palate broke in half. My lungs, pancreas, small intestines, liver, and kidneys were all bruised or bleeding, and I broke 6 ribs, and the artery in my right leg was crushed. So at this point, I was supposed to lose my right leg. I was supposed to lose parts of my organs, and if I did live somehow through all the surgeries, they said I'd have brain damage for the rest of my life, that I'd be different. I wouldn't be the normal Ben anymore. And so first they did surgery on my organs to see how much of each one they had to cut out. Um, to their surprise, in their own words, they said, they didn't understand how, but my organs had healed already to a point where they didn't have to cut out any of the organs that were damaged. To them, it was a miracle, a medical miracle. They had no idea, but it was great. It was great news. The only problem was that after surgery, as they're closing me up, they forgot to take away all the air from around my lungs, and that pressed against my lungs so hard that my lungs then collapsed, and I was gone for a second time this time. Um, and the doctors were trying to revive me, everything, and nothing was working. And they went on and told my parents that if we come back in less than 5 minutes, that Ben will be gone for good. And so during that time, I know I had a family member that got everyone in the waiting room to start praying that God would just simply intervene and save my life. And during that time, they found a lung specialist in the hospital, and he came in and told them to put in chest tubes. And so they did, and I came back to life. I started breathing. It was all by machine, but I came back, and I was back. I was fighting, and so that was, to my parents, that was amazing news. That was just absolutely amazing. The only problem was that the doctors told my parents that even though Ben's still alive, we give him less than a 5% chance to live through the next 3 days. So by Easter, essentially be gone because his body's just been through too much. But the main part is that his lungs will swell up, and when my lungs, they said, would swell up, they would crush themselves, and I wouldn't be able to breathe anymore, and I'd suffocate, and then I would die from that. And so, really, they gave me no chance to live. But during those next 3 days, so by Easter, I was supposed to be dead. By Monday, I was still alive. My lungs somehow had never swelled up. And in the doctor's minds, I did a story with the 700 Club like 5 years ago, and they actually did like um, they an investigation or just to look into the miracles. And like in the doctor's words, it was the greatest miracle in their eyes because it's just impossible that my lungs don't swell up, but they just simply didn't. And I escaped death. I just simply escaped death. And it wasn't the end of the trials. That was actually just beginning for me because I was starting now to come out of my coma, and that was when the real journey began. Through all of that was from the doctor's notes and the doctor's testimonies, and then and the nurses and everything. And so this is where my journey begins, where I wake up and I have to realize the the situation I'm in and what I have to do to come back and be normal again. And so it was a rude awakening, that's for sure.
And I just think about how brave your parents were to have gone through that and to be by your side. At what point when you woke up, because you said that you wanted to apologize or to give them love, do you remember once you started coming out of the coma still wanting that, or did that come much later?
Um, I think that came a little bit later because when I came out of my coma, it was more so the uphill battle that I had. It was more so like I couldn't walk. I lost in those days I was in the hospital, I lost 40 pounds. I was down to like 135 pounds. I'd lost everything physically that I'd ever worked for, but I still had dreams, to play college basketball and to like for me and my friends, we had a dream to win a state championship in basketball and football, and we were pretty good. Like we were a good class, and we had a good chance at that. And so that was what we had worked for since we were like 6 years old. And so that was my main thing when I came out, was that inspiration, that motivation to come back and play. But the one thing that I will say is, as time went on, it was a gradual thing. Um, One of the greatest blessings that came out of my accident was how close me and my mom and dad are now. Like it was going through all the things that I've been through, especially when my mom quit her job for that year to, just to be at home with me and to take care of me and help me. We grew so close, and it's never faded. I mean, it's hard even to leave them when I go home again to visit them. I just, because we're so close because of the accident and everything that we've been through together. But it was a gradual understanding of how blessed I am to have the parents that I have, because they are amazing parents. I mean, I grew up in a really good household, a good marriage, and I
Mhm.
was, it took something like that to realize how blessed I was to have them.
And
But
isn't it something that you had to go through something so catastrophic to change that relationship forever with your parents? It's incredible that we see your car upside down and that gave you a whole new meaning in life. Let's talk about what happened when you experienced what you consider perhaps to be an afterlife. Do you feel comfortable talking to us? I know that's a very intimate, private thing, but I think so many people are intrigued about what that feels like. What did that feel like to you?
well, my first one that I had was in college. I was a freshman at college, and no, that at that point in my life, the doctors told me before I left the hospital that I may or may not have experiences at some point in life that I might remember happening. And this is what I remember is in the field, I remember taking that last breath, when my parents are holding me. And I remember it vividly. Like, this is it. Like, I didn't know what's gonna happen next. I just simply didn't know. And all in a moment, I'm in the next life. I have a brand new body, a new mind. I'm out of pain. I'm out of the blood, the mud, the despair, and I'm in that same field that I just had my accident in, but there's no more color. There was the same trees in the background, the same field, but it was all gray. Like, there was no color at all. And then, and I was looking at my dead body, the body I had just left, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, I remember my first thought was, "So this is what it's like to die." But this wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting to go to a bright place and see a light or something. And then all of a sudden, I would say maybe in a few minutes, to the left of me, a man appeared. He didn't walk up. He didn't look at me that was standing there, and he just looked at my dead body in the field. This man was, I could see that he was tall. He had like a robe, yeah, it looked like a robe on, and he had like a gold rope around his waist, and his skin was like the color of like bronze. It was like actually like kind of like shiny, like just a glamour. And his face, though, that was the craziest part, is that I couldn't even look at his face. It was like you're looking directly at the sun, or I had to shield his face because it was so bright. And like I said, this man didn't look at me standing there acknowledging and seeing all this. He just simply looked at my dead body. He put his hands out. His hands, this gold light came from his hands, and that same light came from underneath my dead body in the field. And it was like he raised my dead body off the ground, maybe 6 inches, and put it back down. And then, like that, I mean, just immediately I'm back into this life, back into the field. The pain's there again. I mean, the pain was right back, the blood, the pain, my parents holding me. The only difference that I had going forward after that was I had ultimate hope. I knew 100% after that I was going to live to share the story. That was the one difference. The pain was still there. That didn't go away. But I did have hope. So it was
And
just cool to
that was a lot
remember
to,
that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. That was a lot for you to remember. But then there was another experience when you were in the hospital. So it happened twice.
Yeah, so this one happened when I was a junior in college. Once again, just random, totally random. I was actually going back to Grand Forks, back to college from Park River. But when I went back to Grand Forks, I took the same road I had my accident on. Now, if the roads around there, that would be going the wrong way. Like, you're literally going the wrong way at Grand Forks. And when I was driving on that road, it was like I didn't know what I was doing until like I mentally woke up. Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm on the wrong road. Like, I'm going the wrong way. And it was like I was being led to go down that road. And I got to the point of where I had my accident. I don't know how many years later or before that, and I started to cry again. The same type of cry, the same. I mean, it's a hard cry that I had the first time, and it was a hard cry the second time, and I knew that cry, and I could feel it within my soul, my body, that something's going to happen, that is something spiritual. And so I put the car into park, and I just kept crying and crying, and finally, it was like it finally came, and it was like a vision in front of me. It was kind of the same thing as the first time, where I remembered one thing, but it was like a vision also in front of me where I could see it. And this time it was that same man that saved me in the field. He was sticking out his left arm, and as his arm went forward, this city appeared. And when I saw the city, that was when I really began to cry. because I'm like, I don't deserve to see this. Like, this is mind blowing. And the city itself, there was two gates, huge gates that went in. I didn't see anybody walking inside the city, but it had huge walls all around the city, and they were made out of like different jewels. Like I don't have any idea, but they were smooth. It wasn't like rough edged. It was smooth, and it was made out of like different diamonds and rubies. I don't know, but it was jewels, and there was buildings inside the city. Um, there's also a mountain way in the background, and there was a river going down the mountain, and you could see that someone lived on top of that mountain, and there was trees up to a certain point on that mountain, and the river went down into the city, from the mountain. And then remembering before that, before that man showed me that city, I remembered walking with that man, and there's the same man in the field, and he was really tall. Like, he was, because the first time it was from a distance. This time I was right next to him, walking with him. He was on the left, I'm on the right, and he was simply sharing with me why my life was being saved, why I was going back, and it was to simply share the gospel and to share my story, and just to inspire people, to help people, from a testimony. And so that man, I'll say too, he was the most beautiful being I'd ever seen. He didn't tell me who he was, but I mean, he was probably around 8 feet tall, and his voice was like the perfect combination of like just beauty. It was just beauty. There's really no other way to explain it.
Sorry about that. Did you feel so much peace that you just felt just at peace and not at odds anymore? Oh, I think I lost your audio now. Sorry. I think we're having audio problems.
Oh, sorry about
There
that.
you are. There you are. Perfect.
But no, it was the peace I had within my soul, my body, my mind. That was the most amazing part. I'll tell everybody that watches this, be excited
Yeah.
for the next life. Like, seriously, like, be excited. It is the greatest. It is beyond comprehension. How you feel, your mind, your body. It is. Uh, there's no words to describe how
Mhm.
you feel. It's
Well, I love
amazing.
that you're sharing everything that you experienced through your book, Finding Faith in the Field, and you sure did that. And now you're going around and you're meeting these young people and sharing this experience. How do people respond when you tell them this? I'm sure they're like me and just in awe of all you've been through.
Yeah, it's actually really cool to see, because my life, if I had dived into the things before and all the things after my accident that I had been through, it's a very relatable story. It's very, as far as hardships go, because I mean, everybody in this life is going through a hardship. I mean, just no matter what level, no matter what it is, I mean, everyone's going through some sort of stress in their life, and that was why I wrote the book. And when people, well, when I go speak or they read my book, I just wanted to give people hope. I wanted to give people hope that you can go through a lot of traumatic, hard things in life, but you can come out of it like a new person. I mean, it can be a blessing in your life, and it has for me. I mean, I've learned so much. I've become someone that I never thought I could be, as far as truly actually
Mhm.
finding myself, like actually knowing myself.
And then look at the shirt. So you have one on. I'm showing the picture of you as well. You
Oh
came up
yeah.
with your own clothing line because it means miraculous or extraordinary. How do people find your book and your merch?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is benhilden.com. So BenHylden.com. And there you can, see my clothing and my book, and just like I guess more of my story, and if you want me to come speak at an event, I'm always loving to do that. So that's always, for me, that's my purpose. My purpose is literally to share the gospel, to give hope to people, to inspire people, and to be an example of, being a child of God, I guess you would say. So
Incredible. Well, I am just so honored to meet you, to be able to share your story. So thank you for that, Ben. So thankful that you're okay and that your life changed for the better because of all this. So congrats on your success with your book and your clothing line. And if you have any updates, you reach out to us here at Lunch for the Soul, because I'd love to update our viewers.
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care of yourself. And I just want to remind you all, you can always find all of my Lunch for the Souls on our Fox Local app for your smart TV. It's so easy to find. You can also find all the episodes on our YouTube page, our Fox 26 website, fox26houston.com. And then you can find me here every Wednesday at 12:30. Hope to see you back here next time. Have a beautiful day.